Good early afternoon or late evening, depending upon where you are on this rock. Hello, my name is Nick Ridley, and you are tuning in to Pink Elephants with Nick Ridley. Um, today's we're going to have a very, very interesting podcast. Something that I've been researching really, really intently for the past week, specifically, but of course, it's something that affects us all as far as I can observe and see. Um, and that is that it appears as if America is for paying customers only. So, ultimately, this concept of America paying for being for paying customers only, I'm sorry, it raises critical questions, and this is under the umbrella of basically our society, our nation as we see it today, and everybody is definitely dealing with the new world. And a lot of us are also feeling the pinch of what's been happening here. Very recently, definitely post COVID, and even before, I think I would say from 2008 onward, we have definitely seen a downward slope in terms of our economy, our purchasing power, our dollars, and all of those fun things. And three of these critical questions in terms of America being for paying customers only. One is, what does it mean to be American? Meaning, should access to basic necessities and opportunities be tied to income level? Another concept that came to mind was the role of government. Should social safety nets be expanded to ensure a more equitable society? And third, individual responsibility. What do you mean, Nick? What I mean is, what are the factors behind individual choices that contribute to economic disparity? So, what does it mean to be American, y'all? What is the role of our government, and what is the role of the individual? Okay, those are the three things. And this is going to dither down from there. Okay. Now, from a strictly financial standpoint, I must say there's definitely a pay to play element. Okay. Access to quality education, healthcare, housing, and other areas. Basically, you have to pay to play. All right. It's not entirely binary. Okay. Because we have free services and charitable organizations. We have museums. Okay. Libraries. We have things like that as well. However, though, by and large, it has definitely morphed into a pay to play system. It's not, I can't say it that way, but it's definitely who you know. Okay, not necessarily what you know, but who you know. And now, from a social and political standpoint, because that's from a financial standpoint, okay, but from a social and political standpoint of America being for paying customers only, this pay to play deal also goes under political influence and social mobility, your access to justice. All right, all of which can be influenced by wealth and privilege. Your politics, how where you can go, how far you can go, how long you can stay there. Okay, whether it is in real time down the block, or if you can take a trip around the country, or as it relates to mobility in terms of your career, your access. Okay, and it appears as if today, once again, is who you know and not necessarily what you know. All right. Now, we have a corollary. We have an opposite side to that because we have a lot of community and volunteerism and democratic participation and all of that. But by and large, it still appears to be a pay to play system. Okay. Now, the unequal access to the basic needs we have is really where the rubber hits the road. Okay. Because a lot of us are out here struggling. Okay. And when I say us, I'm talking about the community. I know myself, I definitely have felt the pinch with beyond a shadow of a doubt. Okay. It seems like money is just flying out the window. Everything has gone up, and we understand inflation, and we'll go into that a little more, the whys and what's happening. But everybody's seeing it, and it's across the board. And one thing about inflation is that a lot of times we fail to realize is that once those prices go up, they don't go back down. So once something becomes inflated, from that point on, it tends to go have a slippery slope and just get more costly and costlier. Take the price of a home in 1972, take the price of a home today, vastly different. Okay. Um, and this is causing a lot of financial strain, and a lot of issues, and a lot of crime, and a lot of mental health issues, and a lot of pain, you know. And it's ironic that we have, as Marvin Gaye would say, we have so much money for war but can't feed the poor. We have billions of dollars that we can send to everyone else, but yet and still it seems like our own people in our own nation, we can never take, our hands are always tied. We are oftentimes told that there's nothing else that we can really do. Now, that's from the governmental side. Once again, one of the components from the individual responsibility side. And then there's also the expectation that there is a government that's supposed to do everything for us as well, which stifles creativity, which stifles productivity, which stifles income, which stifles a nation being healthy from a financial standpoint. So there's a balance here and a very delicate one. But before I go further, I just want to remind us that we make up the government, y'all. Okay? It's not a troll at the top of the hillside. It's a troll in which we voted for. It's a troll in which our interest somehow we felt like is going to be in line with. It's a troll in which we finance various via capital contributions. Those people are our people. Okay? They may not be us. All right. And we don't get in the weeds saying, oh, it ain't me. You know what I mean. Those are human beings just like us that we put in those positions of power. And once in power, we keep them in power. So therefore, we both share this. I must say that. All right. Now, America being for paying customers only, there are 4 or 5 things in which I identify. Okay. And one of them is it seems like as if there is a commodification of everything. And in other words, everything's a product. Okay. It seems like we're increasingly treating everything and everyone as a commodity. Education, healthcare, basic necessities. And this just creates a system where access and quality are determined by wealth, creating a society with tier privileges and eroding the concept of equal opportunity. Case in point, there's a 2023 study by the Kaiser Family Foundation, and it found that 43% of Americans struggle to afford health care, and 26 million lack health insurance. Furthermore, a 2022 report by the Economic Policy Institute revealed that the average cost of tuition at a private university has risen by 180% since 1988, significantly outpacing inflation. Okay? Um, that's just one thing. A 2023 report by the National Center for Education Statistics found that student loan debt in the U.S. has surpassed by $1.7 trillion, has surpassed 1.7 trillion with an average balance of $39,400 per borrower. That's an individual going to school to get an education to further their income and their level and their station in life and coming out burdened and saddled with debt. I'm preaching to the choir. I know this is nothing new. But this supports this idea, this supports this observation that I have, my opinion, that it seems like that America is for paying customers only. It's a pay to play society. Okay. The median U.S. rent in 2022 surpasses 30% of income for affordability. And that was a 2022 stat. There was something recently last week, I believe on MSN or something like that, through the Associated Press, that said that there are a lot of individuals that are spending 50 to 60% of their incomes on rent alone. Okay. To be honest with you, within the last year, I had gone through some issues, fires in homes, things in that nature, just life. And I was paying 60% of my income on rent as well. So this is a very, very real metric. Okay. Another thing is also in terms of healthcare. The uninsured rate for us is 8.5%. 10%, 1 in 10 people that are around you do not have health care. You know, and there are those of us that say, well, that's not my problem. Well, it's your problem when they're coughing on you. Okay. It's your problem when you're having to pay for the lack of their health care as it relates to their mental health, as it relates to them taking off work and being unproductive. You see, all these things have a tax to it. So this erroneous belief, which seems to be a thing here in our country, and where, hey, if as long as it doesn't bother me, I ain't worried about it. Well, I offer this to you. You can be thinking that you're just fine if you're the only one on the block with food, but if 10 people surrounding you don't, it's only a matter of time before the obvious will happen. food for thought. So it might behoove all of us and be in our best interest to look after one another, not from an altruistic or moral only standpoint, but it's the most selfish thing that you could do because it ensures your survival and safety. Because when people become hungry and there is no food, you can look to history as to what societies and nations will do. It will turn on itself and it will show a face that is uglier than anything that we could have ever imagined. Okay, it's civil war on steroids. Demographically speaking, Black and Hispanic households spend higher proportions of income on housing than white households. We all know that. There's a gender gap. Rural communities also face hardships in terms of access to resources. Okay. And the thing about this is, but yet and still, we have billions of dollars that we could send to other countries to ensure that they're taken care of. And yet and still, we can go on any city street right now in a major intersection and see one of us, a citizen of this country, okay, that is out there with nothing. And then we will judge them in some type of way, but yet give our money to those that we have no connection to and do not know. And in some way, they can curry that favor from us. It's a sickness. Something is going on. There's another thing that seems to be a cult of individualism and the erosion of empathy. And that's what I was speaking of in terms of, individuals are thinking about it's just about you. Hey, you know what? We're in this together. There's an ancient wisdom, I think it was Proverbs or something, and it says that, when the rain falls, it does not fall just on one roof. Okay, remember that. When the rain falls. All right. And there's a 2022 report by the Pew Research Center that I came across, and it found that social trust in the U.S. has reached historic lows, with only 19% of Americans trusting the government and 33% trusting their fellow citizens. That means that 1 in 5 people, okay, 1 in 5 people only trust the government, and that only 1 in 3 people trust their fellow person. That means your neighbor. That means your brother, your sister, your cousin. Okay? That's a very serious thing for a society. All right. That's a very serious thing. All right. Robert Putnam, in his book A Bowling Alone, argues that America's declining social capital erodes community support and weakens civic engagement. All right. So, what's the solution? I think that one is to highlight the importance of social connections and community engagement, discussing volunteer opportunities, local activism, and initiatives that foster empathy and understanding across social divides. One will say, "Well, we're tired, Nick." Well, not as tired as you will be if you don't continue to do so and ramp this up, my beloved people. There was also a study by the University of Chicago in 2022 that found that social isolation and loneliness are on the rise here in this country, particularly among our youth. And this can lead to these feelings of depression, anxiety, disengagement from society, and you wonder why they're going in schools and shooting folk. And you wonder why we have this fentanyl epidemic. We wonder why our youth are here depressed and have these we say that they are socially awkward when in fact look at the world in which they were handed. They are not socially awkward. They are wise enough to realize that they are in craziness and they are not well adjusted in a maladjusted society. They have more sense than we adults who walk around with blinders on and still are on this hamster wheel and not identifying or dealing with, how funny, that pink elephant in the room. Okay? So we have to offer grace and love to them because A, they are our future, and B, it is the right thing to do. We cannot blame the youth. Okay? Psychologist Jonathan Haidt, he will say in his book, The Righteous Mind, he argues that our increasingly polarized society prioritizes individual group loyalty over empathy and understanding for those with different viewpoints, i.e., we are all in our silo, i.e., my way, my truth. Okay, now there is the truth, y'all. And I'm going to set this straight. Whether or not we believe it or not, that's fine. However, though, there is the truth, and that my truth thing, that usually is reserved for a liar, to be totally honest with you. From my experience, I'm an older guy. So therefore, I'm a little old school with it. But from my experience, someone saying this is my truth, that seems to be fodder and seems to benefit the thieves and the liar, not those who are truthful and are trying to have some semblance of righteous morality, community, and mobility in this world. I'm gonna keep it a buck. Another thing is this illusion of meritocracy, the illusion of meritocracy. What's meritocracy? Meritocracy is merit, okay? In other words, the one's success is based upon what they can do. their skills. Their success is based upon what they can produce and provide. And there is an illusion here because in this be that all that you can be thing that we've heard called America, and whatever you put your mind to, you can achieve, that has been shoved down our throats ad nauseum. This illusion of meritocracy, and there's a reality of privilege. And the myth of this American dream where anyone can achieve this success through hard work, unpack the systemic inequalities and hidden advantages, okay, that privilege of certain groups making upward mobility difficult for others, the gatekeepers. And and this fuels resentment and it erodes trust in institutions. In other words, why am I going to work hard when it's about who I know? Why am I going to work hard when I see time after time, generation after generation, that this ain't for me? Or meaning the access of is for me. There are many people in the grave right now who are brilliant, but just did not have the access or opportunity. I believe that Brother Langston Hughes, may he rest in peace, will call it a dream deferred. Okay? There's a 2023 report by the Equality of Opportunity Project, and it found that Black and Hispanic children born into the bottom 20% of income distribution, meaning the poorest, have only a 3% chance of reaching the top 20% as adults compared to 12% for white children. Okay? That's huge. 3% chance of making it. That doesn't speak to meritocracy. Okay? Because I know within those communities there are many brilliant young brown and black folk that, if given the chance and the opportunity and the tools, could have been the next Einstein. But due to the fact that they did not have the certain check boxes to check off, they were denied opportunity for life. In other words, that sounds like a caste system, something that we reserve for, in quote, third world countries. And but I think that we just enshrouded under the illusion of this being equal access for all, when in fact no one can prove that. In fact, I can prove, and most can prove if they have the empirical data, that this is unequal access for most, not equal access for all. My last point on this is redefining this American character and reclaiming the values that we have. This is the solutions based aspect right here. Okay. I propose this an alternative metric for defining American character, end quote, beyond wealth and materialism. What does that mean, Nick? That means that one's worth and one's value is not based upon what they have or what they have obtained. What I'm speaking of is emphasizing values like compassion, cooperation, social responsibility. These things built Rome. This is what built Egypt. I didn't say destroyed them. What destroyed them is what's happening now. They became pay for play. They became materialistic. They became narcissistic. They became body conscious and body worshiping. Everything that we were doing now, the men became effeminate, meaning that they didn't have the chutzpah to go out and protect their families, to have industry, to invent, not just to beat their chest like some ape or caveman. We're not going to keep that this simplistic. Okay? I'm talking about all across the board, all of these factors erode societies. All right? We need to redefine our American character, reclaim our values beyond wealth and materialism, compassion, cooperation, social responsibility, allowing your neighbor to come over and get a cup of sugar if he or she may need. Okay? They, whatever. We need to explore potential solutions and movements that promote these values and work towards a more equitable and just society. A Gallup poll 2022, you know I love numbers and data, baby. We got to back this up. It found that 74% of Americans believe a strong sense of community is important to the American way of life. 74, that means 3 out of 4 people. Though 1 out of 3 may not trust the next one, 3 out of 4 know it's important. You heard me? That means that there's hope. Historian Robert Putnam, he adds on as we embellish in his book American Grace, he argues that values like generosity, fairness, and honesty have always been central to the American character. Did you hear me? So if we want to talk about make America great again, what that means is generosity, fairness, and honesty is going to make America great again. I'm gonna keep it a buck. Solutions. How can these values be fostered? Well, A, through education, for sure. community initiation initiatives for sure, individual actions for sure. All of that stuff is good. I say first and foremost because I don't want to bite off more than we can chew right now as we stand in this pool of ickiness. I think the first thing is to make a choice every day to care about somebody else other than yourself, and do it in the spirit of knowing that we are all in this together and we all struggling. We just have different struggles. I, as a black man, at one time thought that white folks' ice was cooler and that they had it better than me when I realized that, you know what, they may have more money than I do, and that ain't even true by and large, okay? But yet and still, and I don't mean that in terms of we balling. I'm saying all of us have been given an economic bill of goods in thinking that one society has more than the other, when in fact, all societies, every segment within the society, most of is doing not as well as a certain small part of each society. You hear me? In other words, there's white folks that got money, there's a lot of folks that don't. There's black folks that got money, there's a lot that don't. There's Mexicans, there's Asians, there's Eritreans. I go down the board. There is a top and there is a bottom and a middle that is becoming increasingly smaller and smaller, trickling to the bottom and not the up. That being said, every man thinks that his burden is the heaviest. You hear me? And if we look at this from that perspective, then when I say these things in terms of every day, find someone else other than yourself to think about it in the context of, because most of us out here are struggling, and guess what, no one's coming to save you. You know who's going to save you? You. And you know how you can save you? By caring about me. You know how I can save myself? By caring about you. It is that simple. If we don't, we're not going to make it. As we can see, we're just going to tear each other apart. And that's what's wanted. And if we are not wise enough, if we are not intelligent enough, okay, because that's just dumb. To be fighting, poor folks fighting each other is dumb. I will say it again. Poor folks fighting each other is dumb. Period. What do you win? The winner of that fight gets what? A whole bunch more nothing and a bad conscience. You ruminate on that one, beloved. Now, lastly, let's talk about the psychological impact. We all know good and well that folks are walking around here losing their mind, including ourselves. Okay? Do you know how many friends I have who are having breakdowns, had breakdowns recently? These strong people. I'm talking about doctors, pharmacists, lawyers, okay? As well as the average, in quote, everyday person as it relates to skill set and profession, not value as an individual or human. Okay, I'll be very clear. All right? The ditch digger and plumber are just as important as the doctor and the lawyer. Okay? So, that being said, there's a psychological component to this. This COVID thing afterward has done incalculable damage in terms of the mental health. How do I say that? I look at the children, look at the statistics, and look at I am a teacher. The things I hear these kids say and how far behind they are, just from a social emotional level. I teach social emotional learning based curriculums as a teaching artist, as well as STEAM based curriculums as a teaching artist. When I go into school systems for residency, I'm like a third party that literally that is contracted for a residency to do a specific type of program for a specific amount of time with youth in school systems across America. I'm trained in the Kennedy Arts integration method, which allowed me to be able to do this. And in that blessing of being involved with that, shout out to Focus 5. Um, the things I hear, the things I see, and being that I am a third party and not the end quote home teacher, a lot of times students are more comfortable when I'm in earshot. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, it's Mr. Nick, the art guy. So, and there's certain artistic license and expression. So, people are a lot more expressive and talk often about how they feel more times they may in other disciplines because art allows that to happen. And I am noticing the psychological effect on these children, on my own, on myself. And it is something that we have not even begun to dig because our therapists, psychologists, social workers, anthropologists, sociologists, guess what? They also were locked down. They also were experiencing something that in recent or ever history has ever been recorded. They too were navigating it. So they didn't have the tools. They may have had more to cope, but by and large, they as well are really going through it. So, what does that mean? My point is that being that we've gone through that experience, we're figuring this out. And there needs to be grace and compassion and empathy and cooperation. And do you see how it all ties in now? Oh, we ain't going to make it. Okay. There's a 2022 study by the American Psychological Association, and it found that when it comes to inequality in these incomes, when it comes to these things, it is associated with increased rates of depression, anxiety, other mental health problems. Hello, hello, hello. See, we're back here, right back here to square one. All right, back here to square one. You know, and I want to drum down again as how this is affecting our kids, particularly the millennials and Gen Z. There's something that I didn't even know this was a thing, y'all. It's called, I was looking up some stats in terms of real estate, the commercial real estate thing, and what's going on around the world, China. And I was looking actually at a documentary on China that on YouTube, and it was going through the real estate boom that's going on there and massive layoffs, what's happening the last 2 years. And there was something that came across that the society there, the millennials and Gen Z have something called the 10 refusals. I said, 10 refusals. I said, what is that? Check this out. The 10 refusals: one, refusal to get married; two, refusal to have children; three, refusal to buy a house; four, refusal to pursue traditional careers. Hold on, y'all. I'm at number four. Does this sound familiar? Okay. Now, there's a question of why this is, and we'll get to that in a minute. Five, there's a refusal to prioritize material possessions. Six, a refusal to participate in the consumerist culture. Seven, a refusal to conform to traditional gender roles. Eight, a refusal to accept the status quo. Nine, a refusal to be defined by work. And 10, a refusal to compromise on their values. This is a worldwide thing. I came across this concept just looking at individuals in China. These 10 refusals. Now, I had mentioned something midway through when I paused, and I said there's a major question in here, and that is why all of this is tied to economics. Every single one. I'm not getting married because I can't afford it, or children, or buy a house. I'm not pursuing a traditional career, refusal number four, because guess what? They ain't gonna pay a lot, and I may get fired in 2 years. Okay, I'm going to refuse to have material possessions because how am I going to pay for it? Where am I going to house it? I can't even buy a place to put a couch into. Do you see how all of this cycles back to one word: income or money? And it's worldwide. And in saying that, now we've expanded and opened up this conversation to where is America just for paying customers and is paid for play? And or are we seeing this across the globe? And my beloved brothers and sisters, I am here to bear witness that this is happening everywhere. Everywhere. Okay? Now, sorry about that. My pooch was getting a little get excited. I guess he's feeling where we're coming from. All right? Shh. Okay. As we continue. Now, when we look at things as eviction filings, for example, according to the Eviction Lab, which they track national eviction filings, they have seen a significant increase. And this is from the periods 2021 to the present, y'all. Um, approximately in 2021, 554,000 eviction filings. This number represents a decrease compared to the pre pandemic levels. You know what I'm saying? And also in 2022, there were nearly 970,000 eviction filings, a 78% increase from 2021. And in 2023, okay, while national data for the entire year isn't available yet, The Eviction Lab tracks weekly filings in several locations, and based on their data, filings continue to be higher than pre pandemic levels. Okay? Now, this, as we can see, this homelessness problem is huge. Okay. And I saw today that there was like, I think the House of Representatives have passed some resolution or passed something through for evictions bans or, eviction moratoriums. And this, I know, is coming on the precipice of a serious financial reckoning that we are going to experience this year, and very shortly, probably sooner than what we all expect. And that is just, if we look at all the metrics and we look at what's happening, is just a reality that hopefully we're preparing for. How are we going to prepare for that? By taking care of each other and by staying ahead of the curve. We cannot keep our heads in the sand anymore. Young people, old people, middle aged people, no matter what your orientation, creed, race, religion, race, or whatever it is that you think you are, or that you want to be. If you are living and you are breathing, and you have to put something in your mouth to stay alive, then this means you. And as long as we can keep it there, and then after that, then we can go in our respective corners, if you will, and do what we want to do. But for right now, we have to be about the business of surviving. And that would not happen if, one, we do not realize that we are all in this together, and we are all, for the most part, 90% struggling. Okay? Now, what are the mental health benefits in this perfect world with an affordable, accessible, and equitable world? Wow, the fact we even have to have these conversations is just baffling at this point. These issues of affordability, accessibility, and equity, they have significant impacts on that mental health, right? Now, the positive is reduce stress and anxiety. Hello? Uh, when basic needs are met and individuals feel financially secure, they experience less stress and anxiety related to housing instability, healthcare costs, and educational debt. Go figure. Increased sense of control and empowerment. Having access to resources and opportunities, they create a sense of control over one's life. What does that do? That in turn fosters feelings of empowerment to pursue goals and aspirations. Now, this speaks to the underserved populations, okay? Increased sense of control and empowerment fosters feelings of empowerment to pursue goals and aspirations. What that means is before one judges the underserved, the poor, those in these ghettos, these boroughs, those in rural areas, and they are judged as if somehow being immoral or somehow unlucky or somehow deserving of their status. Do you not realize that if you empower them and give them control over their own life, I'm not talking about giving them food stamps. I'm saying giving them an opportunity to make their own money to buy their own food, to grow their own food, then you won't have individuals in the street shooting at each other. Period. We all know this. Instead of the judgments, give opportunities. Judgments are like opinions. Everyone has one. How about that? Give opportunity, unless you must need them to be on a lower class for you to feel better about yourself. I'll continue. It also enhances self esteem and dignity. What am I talking about? I'm talking about having affordable, accessible, and equitable society. It enhances self esteem and dignity. We have all this mental health self-esteem talk that now we just seem to want to give a pill to. A pill, literally, pill, okay, to deal with. Well, what about this? Let everyone live, don't tread on them. Then the self-esteem and dignity automatically comes to the fore. Affordable access to healthcare, education, and other essential services that contributes to feelings of self-worth and dignity, particularly for individuals from marginalized communities. This is known. And I'm just giving y'all the game, y'all, because a lot of us are walking around here with very narcissistic, arrogant, judgmental, hunger game-ish perspectives. A lot of them broke. That's the irony. Threes acting like tens. And I'm not talking about gender here, I'm talking about character. And it's a baffling thing to see. Okay? And th- it's just amazing. last two things, which will be positives in a fair and just and equitable society, stronger social connections and belonging, and greater hope and optimism for the future, stronger social connections and belonging. That is a human thing, okay? Isolation breeds insanity. The devil's an idle mind is the devil's workshop. When I looked at a lot of these school shooters, serial killers, psychopaths, cult leaders, things of that, one thing that I've noticed a lot is that at some point in time they spend a whole lot of time by themselves. you know, they were the cat in the room that you ain't never see about. The strange that was off in the corner somewhere all the time. I'm not talking about them in a way because obviously that came from something. Some of them were just pure evil, but then some of them weren't. Some of them were isolated, and I put this in and I'm not condoning or justifying evil now or evil acts at all. Whatever they got, they deserved from that. But if we look at that from a mental health perspective, then we can see how that isolation can breed strange and weird behavior. We need each other to deal with each other, to engage with each other, to bounce ideas off of each other. No difference than a computer system has or an algorithm has a natural feedback loop. Us dealing with another human being is our biological feedback loop. It is hardwired in our DNA to do so. Why? Because that is how we learn. That is how we engage. That is how we understand. That is how we grow because it challenges us to see things in different perspectives. Because if you just have your own perspective and you're isolated and siloed, then your Instagram feed probably looks like the same thing. And you could be missing out on a whole lot of other content. But you're in your deal, so all that you see is uh, potato chips that you love or sneakers. Well, there's a whole lot to this world outside of that. And for you to be exposed, for one to be exposed to those things outside of one's proclivities, one's interests, what one really likes doing just naturally, then that's how we are exposed to other things that challenges us and allows us to grow. Isolation breeds crazy folk. In other words, I'm gonna keep it like my grandmother would say. Okay, and we know about the negative the negative mental health aspects of not having a fair, equitable, just, i.e., a society in which you can make your money and make your money work for you without impediment and without someone barring you from achieving that which, if you work for, you can get. Let's keep it real. Okay. Now, lastly, I want to end with the most important aspect of this. And for this part, I did this purposefully. And what I did is I took five, you're going to like this. I took five ancient texts, things that are thousands of years old, sayings, wisdoms from five different sources. Okay. I took the Bible, the Quran, Buddhism, Judaism, the Torah, what was given to Moses, the Old Testament, and Hinduism. I went across the board, y'all. I went across the board. And guess what? There was a common denominator. And I said, ain't this something? Because the spiritual component is the most important component because this is where it begins. None of anything that I have said prior to this is even possible without this right here because everything starts from the seat of the soul, your heart. Then your mind will follow. But if the heart isn't in it, then it won't be sustainable. I.e., you may be able to be able to do it for a while, but you cannot finish that 400-meter dash. With a spiritual center, you will be able to not only finish that 400-meter dash, but you will be able to enroll in that marathon as well and finish both of them and win. You heard? What does win look like? Win means that you finished the race. Okay? Not necessarily got first. Now, I chose these excerpts to be broad on purpose to support this theme of social responsibility and to address the economic disparity which connects to the issues discussed in this podcast. It is very deliberate. I will say it again. This spiritual component within this podcast that I put together, these five different excerpts, passages from five different ancient texts that we follow from five different walks of faith, if you will. All right. They are chosen broadly to support this theme of social responsibility and to address the economic disparity which connects to the issues that are discussed in this podcast. I had to write that down for y'all because I want to be very clear as this transcript has run back as to the who, what, when, where, and why that this was gotten here, especially in this world. All right. Number one, the Quran, it says 2 verse 177, kind of like a chapter in the verse. It says, and I quote, righteousness is not that you turn your faces toward the east or the west. But righteousness is one who believes in Allah, the last day, the angels, the book, and the prophets, and gives wealth. Here we go. And gives wealth. A righteous one gives wealth out of love for God to relatives, to orphans, the needy, the traveler, the beggar, and those in debt, and frees those who are in bondage, and establishes prayer, okay, and gives a charity. And I'll continue. And they are those who are truthful in their covenant, in their promise. When they make it, in other words, when you say, I'm going to do something, you do it, okay, and are patient. And when you are patient in adversity and hardship, okay, and during time of attack. Now, it said, those are the ones who are truthful. Those are the pious. Now, these are the values I was speaking of earlier. The things in which we should do. Take care of the orphan, the needy, the traveler, the beggar, your relatives, those in debt. Uh-oh. Woo. I can hashtag that. Those in debt. This from one ancient text, this is what it invites us to do. Second, the Bible, Proverbs 22, verse 9. The generous person will be pleased, for they share their food with the poor. The generous person, I'm sorry, will be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. The generous person will be blessed. You won't lose nothing by looking out for someone else, y'all. Okay? It's the most selfish thing you can do is to take care of someone else because it comes back tenfold. All right. No, it doesn't, Nick. The person that says that ain't tried it. Now, well, I tried it before, but I didn't. Okay. I'll continue. Buddhist. It says Dhammapada. Dhammapada, verse 98. My pooch saw something outside. I love it. Dhammapada, verse 189. I'm sorry, in Buddhism. He who gives what he should not give, okay, and he who withholds what he should not withhold, and he who takes what is not given, all three incur blame. He who gives what he should not give, who withholds what he should not withhold, and who takes what is not given, all three incur blame. In Judaism, the Torah, Leviticus, Old Testament 25, verse 35, it says here, quote, if your brother becomes impoverished and cannot maintain himself within your community, then you shall support him as you would a foreigner or a temporary resident, so that he may continue to live with you. Okay? I'll say that again. If your brother, this is from the Torah, Judaism, Leviticus 25, verse 35. If your brother becomes impoverished and cannot maintain himself within your community, then you shall support him or her, okay, as you would a foreigner or a temporary resident, so that he may continue to live amongst you. That means you don't throw him out on the street. That means if you see somebody that needs something, you don't turn a blind eye and say, oh, well, you just weren't working too hard enough to get it. Because there's a whole lot of us that ain't worked a day in their life or worked at all to get what they got. Stop it. You just selfish, okay? And then try to judge individuals in their position as if it's a moral thing or something wrong with their character, when it could be no more than the fact that they didn't have the opportunities that you did or that one did, because you may be in the boat of one being looked at crazy. And if you are that, don't worry about that at all. You keep your values up. You stay on your pivot and on your square at all time, and you're gonna be all right. Because if you have dignity, if you have trust, if you have truth, if you have self-respect and self-control, and you are doing the best that you can, then trust me, you are the best among us, even if you may not have a dime in your pocket. And that is not gender, race, orientation, or nothing specific. That is character specific. Stand on that. And if you are in that situation, I am in that situation with y'all too. May be in it again or what have you. I, Nick Ridley, salute you if you're in that. Do not worry about them that look at you, okay, in any way or judge you unaccordingly. You just keep swimming, Nemo. And last, 5, Hinduism, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, verse 10, and I quote, all actions should be done in sacrifice, O Partha. Perform your prescribed duty, for he who acts for sacrifice attains the supreme. All right. Now, how can we, in closing, how can we implement the wisdom that we've gone through? How can we, okay, through all of this data, how can we do this, Nick? Well, there are basically two different ways. And this is as we close: individual actions and community based actions. I will say it again: individual actions and community based actions are solutions. One on the individual side, and this is as it relates to the spiritual component in our survival, as it relates to us dealing with this inequality, the inaccessibility that we see in our world. Okay? This is how we deal with it. Number one, on the individual level, we practice mindful consumption. You know what? Right now, we got to tighten the belts. All right. And in tightening our belts, it will really let us see just how overblessed we've been. And it will also show us how much we don't need. You see, here in America, we have this thing in which we think we need everything. We always need something more. No, you don't. We have too much more than we can handle. That's a major reason as to why we lost our mind, because we have become too affluent. It numbed us. It numbed our sensibilities. It numbed our morality, our moral compass, I will say. It blinded us because we had too much, okay? And it was too much at the expense of too many others, both internally in this country and externally around the world, okay? Because we have to realize, my fellow brothers and sisters, we have been just having our foot on the necks of so many folk for so many times and for so long, and that on their backs we were able to drive our Porsches. Okay, just to say, it was on the backs and necks of a lot of folk around this world, and we have to own that. And that is another reason as to why we are dealing with what we are dealing with. Because what comes up comes back down. And my understanding or overstanding of karma is not the traditional, if you do it, it's gonna come back to you automatically, because that takes away the mercy and the grace of God. You see. If any of us got what we deserved, not one of us would be living today. So don't talk to me about karma in that vein. Karma is, if I throw this apple up in the air, if I choose like a fool to stand underneath it still and not move, yes, it's going to fall on my head. But if I throw it in the air and I realize, that's not too wise, and I move out the way, then by the grace of God, and more times than not, the mercy of the universe will have mercy on us. Let's look at a child. How many times does a child just do stupid stuff? And you're like, how did they get away with that? There's a universal grace. Okay? If karma worked for that baby, you heard me. So let's put this in context. I'm just trying to give you a little game here, because we have a lot of simplistic um, understandings now. Okay? And a lot of things just aren't quite exactly as they have been presented or purported to be. So karma is, if you throw that apple in the air, don't stand underneath it, move out the way, and don't do it again. Then you have a universal grace and mercy. All right? Practice mindful consumption, number one. Number two, cultivate generosity. It may seem like, well, shoot, I can't do no much because I can only do so much. I'm sorry, because I'm going through it too. Yeah. That doesn't mean that we are effectively pooling our resources together. Doesn't mean that we are problem solving. All right. All right. And there's also room to give, because, like I said, we have so much more than what we need. And right now, we're being shown exactly what is needed and what is wanted. And there are two very big differences. And most of us in this country, in this stuff culture, are carrying around too much stuff to where we got to get storage spaces we can't afford. You heard me. We on offer up and marketplace and Amazon and everything else, trying to get rid of things that we done bought. What does that mean? Just to buy some more stuff to get that away again. We always making room to get more. You heard? So, mindful consumption, cultivating that generosity, advocating for change, and that's happening a lot more now. Okay, advocacy for change is not just okay. We are going to go in the street with a picket sign only. Of course, okay, do that. That's necessary too, I guess. All right, all that stuff. Advocating for change, and advocate, it happens in action. You see, you can advocate for change by not supporting businesses which aren't in alignment with your values. You can advocate, you heard me, right? You can advocate for change by talking with family members and friends in terms of, you know, things that can be done. All right? Boy, I seem like, okay? Now, and also live simply. Okay, I got a little distracted. We got fire trucks, of course, as I do the podcast across the street. At any rate, live simply. And this concept of voluntary simplicity is gaining more momentum, and it's going to do nothing but gain even more momentum, because as you downgrade and downsize after we get done freaking out about the fact that how this wasn't the way we thought it was going to be, after we basically cut the fat, okay, and get to the meat and the potatoes of things of life, the values, what really matters, okay, then this simple life living we will see is easier on us, okay, a lot easier, okay. The quality of life is increased because we're not in a perpetual state of what I call, end quote, get. Most of us are trying to get something. To tell the universe that I need to get something automatically tells it that you don't have it, that you lack. It's a lack mentality. And if it's hard for one to obtain peace and contentment in that state. So, those are individual actions that we can do to implement the spiritual component that is necessary and the foundation to overcome the challenges which we currently face and which we will face and have faced. Community based actions is the second part. Highlight local initiatives. If you see somebody in your community doing well, share their stuff. Let them know they're doing good stuff. And this is one soapbox thing right now that I'm going to get on because I experience this as well as a lot of my colleagues and a lot of other really good people out here that are really rolling up their sleeves and doing the work. Not just talking, not just podcasting, not just no, I'm talking about they're in the streets. They're teaching these kids. They're passing out food to people. I'm talking about tactile concrete work. You heard? Work. Those individuals need to be highlighted. And I see oftentimes that those stories are not liked, those stories are not shared. Somebody dropping their pants off for somebody and shaking their butt is, and they have 1,000 likes on that within the same community. And this could be by the so-called uh, woke folk or non-woke folk, intelligent, brilliant, enlightened, whatever. No matter what it is, I still see a lot of people that are doing the work, not being highlighted, not being celebrated, not getting their roses for real, which means what? I'm not talking about just pats on the back, ensuring that they eat, ensuring that they have a place to stay and a roof over their head to continue doing the work of taking care of your kids or taking care of you. You know what I'm saying? Because that's where we at right now. I don't care what your body parts look like. Body parts is not going to save this country. I'll say it again. Body parts is not going to save this country. Beauty is not going to save this country. Nice teeth ain't, big muscles. Did you hear me? How good you dress, how good you smell. All of that is superficial and matters nothing at all. What's going to matter are those individuals amongst us, which you are one too when you choose to be. And I know that I'm also talking to a lot of you right now. I don't want to leave anybody out. Okay? It has to be done. Highlight local initiatives and people doing the work. Number two, promote collaborative solutions. I'm sorry, I'm going off my script here. Promote collaborative solutions. Can you work with somebody else besides yourself? Can you work with somebody else? Can we work with someone else that doesn't think like we do? Do you have to like them in order to do business with them? Do you have to like them in order to survive with them? Do you hear what I'm saying? Are we so much in our feelings, to where we don't have the courage or the fortitude to be able to sit across the aisle from somebody that we may not agree with, but still come to a common conclusion? Do you hear what I'm saying? You see, these are character questions. And these character questions are things right now that we are not seeing that needs to happen to make this place better. I don't do doom and gloom, but we will talk about the pink elephant, beloved. We can't be in stage three denial with the therapist if we talking about moving on. We have to look at each other in the face and say, "Baby, I was wrong with you," and you look me in the face and say, "Baby, I was wrong with you," and now we can build because we didn't got all the mess out the way and we've acknowledged where we went wrong. Now we can build. But pointing the finger at someone else, not being able to collaborate with anyone else unless they look like you, talk like you, think like you know what? That person is a weak individual. I'm just going to say that. If you have to be around that in order for you to be successful, you're weak because that means that you don't appreciate diversity. Ooh, even if you are a person of color. Ooh, you heard me, right? Because if you truly believe in diversity, that's a principle, not a political statement. And I'm going to leave it there. You can ruminate on that one. That's my fault. Three, support fair trade practices. You heard me. Don't support folk that you know buying low and selling high. Don't support folk that's taking more than what they're giving. Don't support businesses that you know have no interest whatsoever and they do not treat their people right. Do not support those. That's not fair trade. Do not, hey man, if we know they're working in the sweatshop, maybe we shouldn't be buying their products. But I need to have that. Okay. Do you realize that by you buying that, whatever it is, I'm not going to say it here, whatever it is that you know is on the back of somebody somewhere else and they getting their arms blown off, you heard me, or dying in a bunk bed because they didn't work 48 hours straight and still maybe getting $50 a month, but you got that shiny thing, whatever that shiny thing is, we also enjoy the torment that comes with that, the karma. We buy that karma. Ruminate on that one. And I'm just saying what it is. Yeah, it look good. Yeah, we like using it. I do too. But that don't mean it's right. And at some point, we're going to have to make a choice. Support fair trade. All right. Fair. mm, yeah, I can go on to that forever. And lastly, community-based actions in order to implement this fundamental spiritual component in order for us to sustain that which I talked about before and having a fair, just, equitable, and accessible society in this American society, which I am concerned about first, and the world as a whole second. But I can't do nothing for you without taking care of me. Peace. Advocate for policy changes. Okay? Advocate for policy changes. We still have to go to the board meetings, y'all. We cannot allow things to get pushed through without our presence and without our voice. Yes, there's a lot to be done. I understand. We got to pick up the kids. We got to go to work. We got to cook. We got to so and so. And after that, there ain't that much time left over to do nothing. Well, guess what? You got to get big. We got to start putting up our big boy drawers and our big girl panties. And I said that. And in spite of all that, to ensure that we have freedom, that we have safety, that we have um, opportunity, that we have mobility, that we have accessibility, that we are able to truly imbibe in the American values: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And though those ethics right now are definitely have opportunities to be shored up, it is achievable. We have done it. We can do it again and do it even better this time because this time we have learned. And this time we will eliminate the racism that was embedded in it. We will eliminate the sexism that was embedded. We will eliminate all the isms. And y'all, I ain't got time to name them all. Okay? You know what it is. I know what it is. but I will speak to those two because those two I know. You heard? That being said, thank you, dear brothers and sisters in our world community. Thank you, dear brothers and sisters in this American community. And we are in this together. We will either make it together or we will die together. I love you all, and I ain't got to know you. Send some love back. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel at Nick Ridley, Instagram at Art by Nick Ridley. Thank you, and have a great day.